Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. This is Brittany, and today we're going to talk about the 21 books that I want to read for 2021. Now, 2020, as we know, was a complete dumpster fire, and it was surprisingly a very good year for my reading. I read 125 books in 2020, which was a surprise to me. I didn't expect to read that many books. I only gave myself 50 as a marker, and I ended up reading 125. And I just kind of kept increasing my goal, and towards the end of the year, I actually extended it to 130 and then realized I was not going to get there. So we ended with a lovely and even 125. I do like to end on even books if I possibly can. It kind of drives me nuts seeing an even amount. I don't know why. I do the same thing with receipts. I always have to round up to like a 5 number if I possibly can. It just drives me absolutely insane. So without further ado, let's get into the list of books that I have for 2021 that I want to read. Just so you know, these are not in any particular order, so just because number 1 does not mean I want to read it any more than I want to read number 19, okay? So they're just a list of books I want to read. A lot of them are the Goodreads Choice Awards winners, or most of them are actually the nominees this year, because I actually read a lot of the winners last year that I didn't realize were going to win, and I actually really didn't like a lot of them. So, or I give them like all 3 stars, and I just wouldn't really like vote for it. There are some examples I'll put up on the screen here that won a lot of the awards that I read, and I just did not vote for them, even though I did read them, and some of them I did not read and I voted for them instead just because I thought they would be good. And I know that's why Goodreads Choice Awards are not 100% accurate, because a lot of people don't even read the books and vote for them, but that's kind of the situation I'm in almost every year, is that I end up reading a lot of the books that are winners or nominees, and I don't actually end up liking them that much. So before we get into the list, actually, I did not get to 2 books on my list last year of the 20 books that I want to read. So I read 18 out of 20, which is pretty impressive, especially for me and my resolve last year after it waned so hard after October. So the 2 books I didn't end up reading were Ninth House and The Unhoneymooners. Now, The Unhoneymooners was not for my lack of trying. I actually requested it, and it just was taking way too long, and then I thought I was gonna go to Hawaii, so I was like, screw it, I'll just buy the book so I can take it with me on the plane and read it while I'm in Hawaii. COVID had other ideas, so the Hawaii was canceled, and there goes money down the drain, because you can't get that shit back for some reason, which is just rude. And then I ended up putting it back on my requested list at the library, and then it never came in time by the time that I ended up moving to New Mexico. So the Honeymooners did not happen, and then I got here and I requested it, and it is now in my possession. For Ninth House, I honestly requested it like 5 different times last year, and then I kept like extending it. I, for some reason, cannot get myself to read this book. I also have it in my possession again. I'm just afraid I'm not gonna like it. I think I'm having a hard time with bigger books in general, because I feel like I put so much time and energy into them, and I just don't like them. And I just, the story goes on way too long. There's very little books to me that should be longer books. Skyward by Brandon Sanderson is an example of a book that can be a little bit longer because it was fucking incredible. Ninth House has a lot of mixed reviews, and I'm kind of terrified to read it because I just don't know if I'm gonna like the school setting. I'm not sure if I'm gonna like anything about it. I just have so many mixed reviews, and for some reason like cannot get myself to pick it up. And maybe it's because I read the Starless Sea and gave that 2 stars. I know they're not related, but to me they're in the same realm of like very, very popular, very well read, and a lot of mixed reviews. And I just don't know if I can do it. So now let's get into the list of the 21 books I want to read in 2021. Number 1, The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. We are following 4 American Indian men. They're being tracked by an entity bent on revenge, and they are helpless as the culture and traditions that they left behind catch up to them in a violent and vengeful way. This is described as a spooky slasher, and it looks very interesting to me. It just keeps popping up everywhere for me as well. It just, on Goodreads, every freaking book site I've been on, it's like the marketing for that has been incredible, because I've seen it literally everywhere. Amazon, Goodreads, any other book thing, it's been on there. I've seen it a bajillion times, and I keep seeing it. So the universe was telling me I need to read it. It's kind of like 3 short stories with plots that intertwine. So I'm really interested to see how that's gonna work out. And I've heard it has some explicit deaths. And I know a lot of people really did enjoy it, because I know a lot of death scenes and stuff are not explicit, or they're like there's a fine line, but a lot of people have said they really enjoyed the death scenes. And also, I like knowing there's some death because I hate whenever everything seems really scary and whatnot and then no one actually dies. So the second book that I want to read is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So our heroine receives a frantic letter from her cousin saying like something's wrong with her, she's being poisoned, something is going on and she needs to come out there and see her. This forces our heroine into the Mexican countryside. She's a glamorous debutante with like chic gowns and beautiful red lipstick, and she's more suited for cocktail parties than amateur sleuthing. She's then thrown into a past of like old mining money and a family's violent past. And I think that a lot of people have said this is really slow for like 200 pages and then it gets nuts. So I'm really looking forward to that. I do enjoy sometimes a slow burn horror, and I mean, it's so popular, I kind of want to just read it and see what it's all about because again, this one has a lot of mixed reviews, but it usually tends to have 3 to 4 stars. Also, what's really cool is that the author actually created a Spotify playlist to give us like the Gothic vibes, and I'm really into that, and I'm totally gonna listen to that playlist while I'm reading this book. I'm not sure when I'm gonna read it. I kind of want to request some of the horror books closer to Halloween and such, but at the same time, I kind of hate when I read a bunch of the same books at the same time. Like they don't, even though they don't have similar premises, even though they're all like horror, you can kind of still get burnt out. I'm kind of a bored person. I get bored very quickly, so I need things to mix it up. So I like a contemporary, and then I need a sci-fi, and then I want to read a fantasy, and then I want a historical fiction. I need a whole bunch of different things at one time, and reading too many at the same time that are too similar, it can also make the stories bleed in together. The third book is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and this has been unbelievably popular, so much to the fact that even like my yoga people that I follow and get emails from, like email subscriptions, even list this as the books that they want to read this year. This is one of those books they want to read. Every single person and their mom is reading this book. I don't know how it became so wildly popular, but it's like insane the amount of people that I know that know about this book that usually don't even know about new releases or what's going on in the book community, and they want to read this book. It's on almost every single book list for 2021 that I've seen from people. Like, it's insane. Or they've already read it. Basically, as far as I know, like the heroine ends up killing herself or something, and she goes into a library and gets like the option to see what her life would have been like if she made different choices. So in this library, there's like infinite library, you can go and read a book and it's gonna tell you what one different choice would have meant in your life. And a lot of people have described this as a little dark and brooding and introspective and thoughtful, and I'm really hoping it gives me some good feels, but a lot of people just said it's just a little existential. Like, would any of these lives truly be better? We don't know, and I think that's what this book is trying to explore. The fourth one I want to read this year is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. On an island off the coast of Ireland, these guests gather for a wedding and someone ends up dead. Now, I know that this book is very atmospheric and spooky, and it takes place in an isolated place, which I do kind of enjoy those because there's only a limited number of suspects, so you're kind of beating your brain for which one seems the most spooky and evil. I don't know. I do just enjoy those. It's very like Agatha Christie, and I do like seeing how those play out, so I'm excited to read this. The fifth book that I want to read this year is A Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. They say it's like frying green tomatoes and Steel Magnolias meets Dracula, and I love fried green tomatoes, and I also love Steel Magnolias. So I'm really excited for this. I did try actually listening to this last year on audiobook, but I just could not connect on audiobook, and I feel like some books you can just, for me, not listen to them on audio. They just do not work out. I wanted to attempt this in a different format and see if it works for me. It's like a southern flavored supernatural thriller. It's set in the 90s about a women's book club, and I think a lot of it does focus on the women and their issues with their husbands and their misogyny in their culture and their society, and I'm excited to read it. I hope it's good. I love a good vampire story. So the next book that I want to read is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This has been overpopularized, but I think for good reason, because this has the highest star rating out of any of the books on my list, coming at 4.53 stars. That is a very high rating, very high. We're basically following this like magical caseworker who works for like obviously a magical department, and he's set to go out to like this orphanage where these special children, but they're dangerous special children. I know one of them apparently is the Antichrist and could like lead to the end of the world. And he's sent out there to go check on this orphanage. He's given a special assignment. And a lot of people describe this as like warm and whimsical and thoughtful and just like one of those like heartwarming stories. So I'm really looking forward to like a feel-good book. And I think this is one of those feel-good books that I might need if I'm having a bad day. So I already have this requested. I'm really looking forward to reading this and finding out what's going on with it, but everyone's been talking about it. It's been very hard for me to even try to get a copy of it. The next book that I want to read is The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. A young woman discovers a strange portal in her uncle's home and it leads to madness and terror. And that's really all I know. I just saw this on the Goodreads Choice Awards nominee list and I really wanted to see what it was about. It's on the nominee list for Best Horror. I mean, it's published in 2020. It has 3.88 stars on Goodreads and I just wanted to check it out. It looked spooky. I know a lot of people aren't saying it's very horrific, but then other people are saying it was terrifying. And I think it's more maybe psychological and like kind of weird and like the things that she sees in this portal are like freaky. I don't know if it's like thrillery horror, so we're just gonna see how that goes, but I already have it in my possession and I'm definitely looking forward to it. It just looks very atmospheric and spooky, but again, sometimes the cover just sells it. And it kind of makes me a little bit sad that it's like a brand new book and it was not even like on a hold list. So I'm just gonna read it and hope for the best because maybe this is like an unsung hero of the best horror list. Because a lot of times when things win, they're really not even that good, they're just popular. The next book that I want to read is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. I tried to read this last year and I got to page 286. I'm still on there on my Goodreads because I was not losing my place. I'm on page 286 and I already re-requested it. But basically what happened was I just ran out of time. It was on somebody else's hold list and I couldn't renew it anymore. And it just kind of took me a minute to get to even 286 pages because there's like 600 pages in this book. So I got almost to the halfway mark and I'm excited to continue on in that. But I did just try reading it the other day and it's kind of heavy, but not heavy like, and it's like too intense to deal with. It's just almost like a lot of information. It's like I'm reading a textbook. Let me give you some backstory on this. Basically, this 24-year-old Ashley Cordova is found dead one night. They think that she committed suicide and she's the daughter of like this very highly regarded like black market movie producer named Stanislaus Cordova. And there's a lot of like intricacy to his fame because he makes like these weird, almost like, what is that word? It's not smut. It's like, those like bad, crazy films that are like snuff films. There we go. They're all like, people say it can border on snuff films and they are very like intense, dark movies that people are just obsessed with. He's this huge underground network of people obsessed with them. So we're basically trying to figure out what happened to his daughter and at the same time we're learning more about his life and maybe who he even is because there's a lot of suspicion that he's actually not even a man, it's a woman. And like he's actually his assistant who comes out in public as his assistant. So it's very interesting to see how that's gonna play out. A lot of people say the twist at the end is intense. I think I'm just trying to get there because right now trying to get the information on what happened to her, it's a lot and I really don't like the side characters so far. So we're gonna see how that goes. The next one, is One by One by Ruth Ware. And I know most people I've seen that have reviewed this did not like it, or they couldn't finish it, or they DNF'd it. I think it may be Ruth Ware's worst book, but it's the last one of hers that I need to read. I have read every other Ruth Ware book, okay? So I need to read this one so I can add it to my repertoire, and so I can make a video on a guide to Ruth Ware. And so I need to suffer through this to make that for you. So I'm not expecting this to be any good. A lot of people say they guess the killer from the first page. So apparently they get snowed in like this beautiful rustic mountain chalet and I think someone like ends up missing. And it's again one of those books where it's like a set theme of suspects. Which sounds good, right? But if you can guess the killer from the first page, probably not. I don't really know any much more than that. I don't really want to know. I kind of like to go into my thrillers a little blind just so I can kind of, I don't know, get some sense of like excitement for what might happen. Surprisingly, it has a 3.74 star rating. I mean, I guess everyone on BookTube just freaking hates it. Maybe other people like it. I don't know. The next book that I want to read is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And this one is obviously extremely, extremely popular. And I expect to like it. It sounds very interesting. And I do like V.E. Schwab's writing, even though I wasn't in love with the last book I read of hers, which was also the sequel to another book, which I loved. So I think I'm just being really hard on it. Addie LaRue doesn't want to get married off to like this terrible piece of shit in like the 1700s. So she decides to basically make a pact that no one will ever remember her ever again, but she gets to live forever or something like that. I don't know. Some people say she like falls in love with the devil, but like I haven't seen anything about that like in the synopsis. So, I mean, that could just be like a surprise. I don't know. I'm very interested to see how this is gonna go. I know that her and the devil he keeps trying to like get her to sell her soul so she can get remembered again. So that could be true. I don't know. I'm excited either way because I haven't really met many people that didn't like this, and it just sounds like a very interesting premise that like no one ever remembers her, and then all of a sudden like 300 years later, like someone in a bookstore remembers her name. So I don't know. I'm just kind of excited to see how it turns out. The next book that I want to read is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, and this has been a highly anticipated book for me. I'm very, very excited for this. I mean, basically, Chloe Brown is a terminally ill computer geek with like a goal and a plan for everything, and one day she almost gets hit by a car and then realizes that she needs to get a life. So she makes a list of all the things that she wants to do, and she enlists the help of her super hot superintendent, Red, to help her do that. And I think they fall in love in the process. So this is a romance, which is different for me, but it has been so highly regarded by pretty much everyone on BookTube and people that I personally trust. And I'm just gonna give it a shot. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I had something I forgot that I had to do. So it's been like 4 hours and here we are again. How are you? The next book that I want to read is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. Apparently the boy in the story apparently this is a story about someone who summons a ghost. That's really all I know about this. I don't really know too much else other than the main character is Latinx, and we're talking about gender a little bit in this, so I'm not exactly sure what's all going on yet, but this has been a very highly regarded book, and I'm very excited to read it. It sounds a little paranormal, sounds a little contemporary, sounds a little LGBT. That's some good shit. So I'm really looking forward to this. The next book that I want to read is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. As we all know, I love sci-fi. So when I saw this book, it came through Book of the Month. I don't have Book of the Month. I'm not that cool, but I know a lot of people got it through their Book of the Month subscription, and I really want to read it. In this book, multiverse traveling is possible, but you can't travel to like that parallel universe where your other self is. So you can't obviously exist in the universe where there's a second one of you, which makes perfect sense. Our main character is Kara, and she's like 8 surviving doppelgangers, and then one of them mysteriously dies, and now she's thrown into the plot of this book. And what it uncovers is secrets from the past and the future that can unravel all of it. So this just sounds like something very up my alley. The next book that I want to read is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. And I haven't read N.K. Jemisin yet. I have one of her books. I have the first book in her Earth something trilogy. I'm trying to look for it on my bookshelf right now. I don't remember what it's called, but it's that one. So I have that book. I haven't read any of hers yet because for some reason, as soon as I own a book, I just don't want to read them, and I don't know why. But as far as I know, in this book, like every city has a soul, and once the city finally reaches a level where it has a soul, it actually like creates a soul. Like it basically has a person become that soul. So like there's someone already exists in the world who embodies that soul from that point on. And like, I think we're following New York City, who has 5 because she is like different boroughs, and each one has their own soul, which is a really interesting concept. But I know a lot of people really love this book, and a lot of other people have DNF'd it. So I hope that I can wrap my brain around it enough. I think it's a really fascinating concept. I think N.K. Jemisin just has the most amazing concepts, and like, what a fantastic freaking writer she is. But I mean, I also haven't read any of her books, but the concepts I know that her books are about are just so cerebral and so real though at the same time. It's so interesting, and I'm really excited to read this, but the problem is also her books is they tend to be very long, and I just don't really have the patience for long books at the moment. The next book I want to read is The Henna Artist by Alka Joshi, and I believe this came out last year. Yes, it came out in 2020, and it has a 4.24 star rating on Goodreads. And I remember actually watching a video. I have to find that booktuber, but she was kind of small, but she did like an in-depth review on this. If I find it, I'm going to have to link it because it was a great review and it made me really want to read this book. And it just sounds so beautiful because I do love some good like historical fiction. This was a Goodreads Choice Award nominee for both historical fiction and debut novel, which is impressive. This is set in the 1950s, and we're following a 17-year-old who is escaping a terrible marriage, and she becomes a requested confidant and henna artist, and it just seems like I love following people's like life stories from like abusive relationships. It reminds me a lot already, like this premise sounds like Honolulu, which I read last year, and I think I gave that one 5 stars, so. And basically she's tracked down by her ex-husband, ex-abusive husband. Again, a lot like Honolulu, just completely different setting. And basically like all her protection and her life she's cultivated is threatened. And I don't know much else past that, but it just sounds really, really good. And it sounds like one of those beautiful, heart-wrenching, heartwarming stories. The next book I want to read is Home by Dark by Riley Sager. I'm really excited for Home Before Dark, and I actually got this on audiobook last year, but by the time as soon as like October, I just stopped listening to audiobooks. I kind of had a hard time reading. So anything that got like kind of released after July of last year, I have not really paid attention to. Home After Dark sounds a little bit like The Haunting of Hill House, in which like her parent, I think her dad like wrote a book about their experiences living in this haunted house when she was a kid. And obviously she ends up going back to it or something. That's all I really know. I know a lot of people, like there's been a lot of spoiler videos. I just did not watch them because I really wanted to be surprised, especially when it's like a horror mystery thriller. Like I really don't want to know much of anything. There are some books I like being spoiled for, and those are the books I usually do not like spoilers for. As far as I know, there's just a lot of secrets. They could be spiritual secrets. I don't know. They could be supernatural things. They could be supernatural things. And the thing I like about Riley Sager is he does do a lot of supernatural versus real human monsters. But in the end, the human monsters are always the ones that are there. I kind of would love a actual ghost story from him, because I do tend to enjoy ghost stories more, because to me, they're just a little more terrifying. And I think that the supernatural just works for me. And I love that he weaves those into his stories, but the supernatural never seems to actually ever be the case. So spoiler alert for all his books. It just bothers me because there's a lot of instances where I kind of would like maybe some things that couldn't be explained. Even if there was a human monster in the end, it'd be kind of interesting to know that there was like something that couldn't be explained. You know what I mean? I think that's why I liked, what is that Cabin in the Wood one that he has? I liked that one. I really like that one the most out of all of his because it gave me more of a supernaturally feel. And that's kind of what I need. So Home After Dark seems like it have a really good setup for that. So I'm hoping I'll at least give it 3 stars. The next book that I want to read is A Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. And I read his other novel, The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, last year. And it was a 5-star read. It was incredible. I know the ending was a little weak, but I also kind of liked it because it was something that was just very different. It was a little Black Mirror-esque for me, and I really enjoy Black Mirror and things usually of that nature. And I just didn't see it coming. I really liked that. And I'm hoping that this one is good too. No one I've seen has said it was like terrible. Most people I know have rated it slightly lower, usually by a half to a full star, which is fine by me. All I know is there's basically like a mystery on board when they're like sailing to Indonesia or something, and they were basically following a rolled around detective who was like a suspect in a case. And I don't really want to know much else past that. I kind of want to let it go for now. The next book I want to read is Long Bright River by Liz Moore. I currently own this in my possession, per the library. We're basically following a tale of 2 sisters, and then one of them goes missing while the other one I think is like a cop or deals with the drug trade on like the correctional side. And I know it's set in Philadelphia. I don't think it's as much of a tale of like a thriller. A lot of people describe it more of like literary fiction. I think it's about these 2 sisters and family ties more than anything else. But I know Gabby reads. It's one of her favorite books of 2020. She's read it like twice last year. So I have really good high hopes for this one. The next book I want to read is If I Had Your Face by Frances Shaw. We're set in contemporary Seoul, Korea, which again, Asian literature. And we're following 4 young women making their way in the world. So this already sounds like my type of story. We're basically seeing the world of South Korea and like the hierarchies and the K-pop fan mania. And I think it's kind of like where their friendships save themselves. So I'm really interested to see how this fiction turns out for me. The next book that I want to read is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. And I know so many people talk about this book and they love it. I do hope I don't find it boring because I know a lot of other people have found it kind of boring and it sounds a little slow. Basically, civilization collapses and we're following a nomadic group of actors. Basically, a famous Hollywood actor falls over dead during the production of King Lear, and then the world ends after that. I don't really want to know much else. I know a lot of people are very attached to this book and they said some of their favorites, so I'm looking forward to it, but I am a little worried I'm gonna find it a little slow. I'm also not sure how I feel about the premise, although I do love like dystopian stuff, so I'm hoping the end of the world feels very end of the world and very poignant of our times. The last book that I want to read in 2021 is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Now, I myself am surprised this is on the list, but at the same time I'm not surprised because I'm not a big fantasy fan all the time, and I'm not a big fan of heist stories, but so many people have recommended this and said this was like their favorite book and they love it, and so many booktubers I know love this book. And I felt like I need to at least try it. You know what, if I don't like it, I don't like it, but I have to give it a shot. It takes place in Ketterdam, which is basically Amsterdam, and I really like that. I love the setting. It sounds really interesting. I know it's like a young adult heist novel. A lot of people say it's kind of like a young adult version of Way of Kings. Is that it? Haven't read that either. It's too long for me at the moment. I don't know when I'm gonna be able to tackle large fantasy books again, but I really am trying to keep everything to 400 pages and less this year for a hot minute. Well, thanks for listening to me ramble for God knows how long this video is, and I hope that you get some books read in 2021. I have a lot of friends who even want to read 5 books this year, and you know what? It's not that hard. You can do it. 5 books in a year? Honey, you can do this. Try to read a book or 2 before summer, and then it'll just feel better. You know what? Go on a vacation and take a book with you. If you want some suggestions on how to read more, let me know, because I have many of them, which I feel like nobody talks about. And I think that's why I can definitely fit books into my very busy schedule. And when I was working 60 hours a week and had the full-time YouTube channel and read 125 books, I was able to obviously read 125 books. Anyways, thanks so much for watching this video. I will talk to you guys next time. Like, subscribe, and join the tribe. Have a lovely day. Bye.